Welcome in. This is The Spread. I'm Cameron Tarrant, and that is SoCon John Hooper, as always, on this beautiful Sunday afternoon here in Greenville, South Carolina, here at Paladin Stadium, coming to you live. SoCon John and I. John, man, how's it going?
It's going great. Looking forward to covering the FBS every conference today. We'll do our best. We'll do our best to find who the worst team is.
We upset some fan bases on Thursday with our SoCon predictions, John. Kind of ruffled some feathers there.
Probably upset me more with App State stuff I had in my alma mater today. So, but I'm delighted to be able to talk about the new Sun Belt.
Yeah, got a lot of good things to talk about today. John and I are going to go through the entire FBS from the Power 5, ACC, SEC, all those teams, all those conferences. We'll go down to Group of 5 as well, look at the Sun Belt, American. We'll just kind of talk everything, make our predictions for all of the conferences, and then who we think is going to make the college football playoff at the end of the year. So we're going to start, John, in the ACC, and we're pleased as always when we talk ACC football. We have Donald Barber, who's a big-time Virginia Tech super fan, joining us. Donald, man, how's it going, buddy?
It's great. How have y'all been?
Oh, man, it's amazing. Beautiful day today.
Absolutely.
Donald.
I hope we're not in what they call fake fall.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it stays nice and the temperatures have kind of chilled out here.
Donald, do you own a turkey fryer?
Do
you own a turkey fryer?
I do not, no.
I think I thought every Virginia Tech fan owned like a.
But would Hokies fan want to fry turkeys?
They sell them at the game, like a turkey leg.
The turkey legs, yeah.
They sell the big turkey leg. I have 2 big green eggs, so that's how I do my turkeys, is the big green egg.
There we go. Well, we're going to talk some Clemson. We're going to talk NC State, Miami. Those are some of the big teams coming into this year. But, Donald, I really want to talk to you about Virginia Tech, because here's a team didn't have a great season last year. Justin Fuente no longer there. They've got Brent Bryant, the new head coach there in Blacksburg. Just your general thoughts of what you as a fan and what you kind of expect to see from your Hokies this year.
The expectation is if we can get 8 wins, I think for Price first year, that would be a solid season. Price has that history with Beamer and Bud Foster, as he kind of learned the ropes of the game, so to speak, and Tech's defensive system years ago. He spent part of his time growing up in Virginia, about an hour away or so from Tech. So he is definitely steeped in the history and the appreciation for just living in that area and the excitement of football season and all, and what it means to the area. So I think we're going to get a much needed shot in the arm of energy just on that alone.
Yeah, I think Brent Bryant will definitely bring back that lunch pail mentality that has kind of been missing for the last few seasons in Blacksburg.
Yeah, I believe he got the one of the defensive coordinators out of Florida State to run defense, I believe. Looks like he's put together a pretty good roster of coaches, and I'm looking forward to. I think if Grant Wells ends up being the quarterback, which many seem to think that he will be, I'm dying to see how Cole Beck at wide receiver turns out this year. I'm not sure if you've heard much about him, but under Fuente, he started out with Tech, and then after a season went and concentrated on track and field, where he's been voted the top ACC track guy in indoor and outdoor. So the guy's like 40 speed, 40-yard dash and all is amazing. So some believe that he had a difference of philosophy, as I guess, so to speak, under Fuente, which is why he ended up leaving. So he is back at wide receiver. So it will be interesting. Who knows if the guy can catch, but he is definitely going to be able to get the speed going and get open.
Well, and I feel like that Tech has got to figure something out in the pass game. That's not something they've been particularly good at the past couple of years. They've got to get something going in the pass game, which if they can get this guy back going, I feel like that's going to be a huge asset for that Virginia Tech offense. Let's take a look at the schedule, Donald. Y'all open up on the road, actually, at Old Dominion. Interesting that y'all are going to Norfolk to play that game.
Revenge game.
Yeah, a little revenge game for the Hokies, right?
Yeah, and of course that was the location the last time we gave them a gift and went there to play. and things didn't work out so well, and that was the first indication of the team imploding as we had a few players kicked off, left over from the Beamer years.
That game was like 60-something to 30. Like, wasn't it like a blowout?
Well, no, it was a weird game. I feel like there was some. Old Dominion played some Beamer ball. I'm pretty sure Old Dominion blocked a field goal.
It was like
one of the notable things of that game was we lost our starting quarterback. He broke his leg during that game. Was it Josh Jackson?
Yes.
And so that played a huge part in that loss. It was losing him, and then of course a couple of the defensive guys apparently got into a fight during halftime. And
it's always good, right?
Yeah, one was the guy that ended up at Miami that last year or two. I can't. His name fails me at the moment, but yeah, he was. It'll be interesting going back to ODU because they've never been a pushover with us.
Couple of big games noticed on the schedule, Donald. September 22nd, West Virginia comes to town. That's a big rivalry game. And then you got to go to Pitt October 8th in a game where, I feel like Virginia Tech might be the second best team in the ACC Coastal behind Pittsburgh. So that game right there, October 8th, could sort of help determine who's going to win that division early on in the year. But talk about the West Virginia game, because that's a heated rivalry between those two schools.
It is, and I'm actually going to travel up. I don't have a ticket. If I got to stand outside the stadium and listen to it all, I will, but I'll get into that game. It's a sellout game already, and it's going to be the first time in, I think, 2 or 3 seasons that we've had a Thursday night game, ESPN. So that has been Tech's bread and butter. And
Lane Stadium's going to be rocking that night.
And
you got to be a brave soul.
That we will play West Virginia for I think like 8 years or so. So there's a lot on the line just in the amount of time it will be before we face them down the road.
That was one of Virginia Tech's worst performances last year, right? Against West Virginia.
West Virginia basically tried everything to give that game away to us at the end, and we still managed to screw it up. So, it was definitely not one of our finest moments.
You get Miami at home. That's homecoming for your Hokies, and then you get a week off, and then you get North Carolina State. You got to go on the road to take on the Wolfpack, two teams that a lot of media are really giving a lot of love to, in Miami and North Carolina State, and I just don't understand why, because Miami hasn't really proven themselves at all to have taken that next step, especially they've got a new head coach in Mario Cristobal this year. And the North Carolina State, they beat Clemson last year. That's the best thing that they can say that they've accomplished in the last decade. Like, I don't understand why the media is giving those two teams
I can
so much love.
I can see why they would for NC State because of Leary. Is back.
Leary's a good quarterback, yeah.
But like
Van Dyke's a good quarterback, but
I don't think Van Dyke's as good a quarterback as Leary.
But I don't think Miami's got the defense that they need to compete in that division either.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think Miami's overrated too.
Oh yeah, I think every year Miami is overrated.
Yeah.
And as a Tech fan, I'm sure you see that, don't you, Donald?
Yeah, I mean, Miami, they never play as a team. They are a team of individual players, and it shows because there are many seasons where they probably should be performing much better, but they're so wrapped up in that turnover chain or whatever.
Yeah, Cristobal's getting rid of that though this year. He's scrapping that.
So I mean, it was, it's that whole going back to that, I guess, thuggish mentality of the '80s that would go on with that swagger and cockiness, and it's like, look, guys, put together a 10-win season and then maybe start getting your swagger. But until we see 10 wins or 11 wins from you, let's calm it down a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And then you finish up with Tech, Duke, and then Liberty. So you kind of cakewalk through the month of November before that big Thanksgiving Day weekend matchup with your boys in Charlottesville.
Yeah. What we refer to as Lane Stadium North.
Yeah.
The upsets.
Is that stadium?
Scott Stadium. Have you ever been to a UVA game in Charlottesville?
Yeah, me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, actually, the last time I was there, it was the last time Tech had lost to UVA. Someone had gotten a 50-yard, like 10 rows off the field behind the UVA bench. They were UVA fans, and I got the flu that day. It was the last time Tech had lost until like 3 seasons ago, I guess.
So what is that, 2003?
You took the flu and a loss.
I refuse to go back to watch a game there since then, but it's just not the fans there. It's I don't know. That's a whole nother story with I'm sure y'all feel that way with like fans and all, but hopefully Liberty got one on us. What was it, 2 seasons ago? The whole
I remember that
redo on the kickoff or whatever.
Speaking of redo,
that was a one-day classic. But hopefully that Liberty game won't be bad. We'll finish the season with a few wins and be all eligible.
Looking at it, I really think Virginia Tech's ceiling this year is probably 10-2. I think that's a good mark. If they can get 10 wins, I think that's a heck of a job in Brent Bryant's first year.
Absolutely. If like I said, my expectation is set at 8 right now. So anything above 8 is I consider a huge. I think that the team is going to have a lot of faith, and we're good at. Holston will be at running back, and Grant Wells is a very good thrower, and I'm not sure how much they'll play. Was it Jason Brown that came from South Carolina?
Yeah.
I know Wells seems to have more of the pedigree and the experience there, and he's looked very good in spring camp. They're moving Connor Bloomrick that played part-time at QB last year.
Yeah.
He's going to be, it looks like a wide receiver / tight end type player. So he's passed. He is injury prone though with the history of knee issues, but he he's someone that I could see them doing a trick play involving him.
Yeah.
And defense will always be solid. Of course, offensive line is always suspect with Virginia Tech over the years, which is why they've had trouble getting running games going on. But yeah, we'll see. The fans are definitely excited about Pry taking the helm. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, I think Virginia Tech is poised for a good year. I think 9-3, 10-2 is where their ceiling is, and I think that's a good mark for them. We got to talk, Donald, about Clemson because Clemson obviously a down year last year, went 9-3 in the regular season. Could not seem to throw the ball, couldn't seem to move the ball offensively. They got it going more on the run game later half of the year. But it seems like everybody's thinking Clemson's going to be back this year, at their place on top of the conference. What do you think about objectively here, Don? Try to be as objective as possible here. What do you think about Clemson here in 2022?
Well, I believe it. Is the confidence there in the quarterback? I'm assuming it's the same starter as last year, correct?
Yeah, DJ should be the starter. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I know people had mixed feelings when Elliott left. Some were very happy to see him leave for UVA, and others remember him as that component with the national titles, and so it'll be interesting to see how things go with new coordinators involved, and DJ's got an extra year. Maybe he felt too pressured to rush, and maybe we'll calm things down this year.
Yeah.
But I don't see, other than maybe NC State shocking them again or something. And wasn't it who was it last year? Wake Forest, that was pretty strong.
Really good. And look, Wake was kind of poised to have a big year this year. And then Sam Hartman, that news comes out that the quarterback, he's not going to be able to go this year for some sort of non-football related illness or injury.
Pull another thing from the NC State. It seems like they've played. Wasn't it about 4 or 5 years ago they had a down to the wire game against Tennessee?
And they missed the field goal.
Yeah.
Yes, I was at that game, 2016. Yep.
It was like a 25-yard field.
Yeah, at the end of regulation, and
Wow.
then Clemson ended up winning in overtime. Yeah, I was there that day.
Yeah, there are certain, just like Boston College for us. I mean, they're never, but for some reason, Boston College shows up and plays us tough.
Yep.
You know, all the time, no matter what kind of record they have. For some reason, they're like championship material when they play Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and then obviously we got Notre Dame, but I don't know what to think of the Irish coming into this year.
Yeah, you know, I don't think anybody does, because just like Miami, they tend to get overinflated in the rankings and the hype, and so you never know what to expect out of Notre Dame because there's just always so much hype. There's literally like 5 teams every year that get just overinflated. Miami and Notre Dame are 2 of those.
Yep, exactly. So, all right, Donald, real quick, your prediction. Yeah, you kind of threw it out there. Who's going to win? What's the ACC championship game matchup, and who's going to win?
I will. To me, at this point, it looks like it'll be Clemson and Pitt, with Clemson winning.
I like it. That's what I've got too. That's what I've got as well. Clemson beating Pitt. I just think those 2 teams right now are probably the 2 strongest in their respective divisions.
Yeah.
So, but good luck to your Hokies this year. Like I said, I think they're poised to have a pretty big year if they can, if they can stay healthy, and if offensively they can sort of find a rhythm on offense.
Yeah, absolutely, and looking forward to hopefully this NIL stuff doesn't screw college football too much, but
yeah,
I could work a turkey fryer and a turkey leg into the NIL somehow, I'm sure.
Yeah,
for a player.
Every Virginia Tech player gets a free turkey leg.
I think there was several players that are making as much as collectively it's like $300,000 and some thousand, and then you look at some of these kids that are well into the millions on just and it's like what's DJ's deal worth?
I know. I don't know. I think he's close to $1 million with his Bojangles and Dr. Pepper deal. If it's not quite $1 million, it's right there at it.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I hope it doesn't get too out of control, but it is what it is as a thing.
Exactly. Well, Donald, we appreciate you joining us, man. Hope you have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon.
All right. Have a great one.
And go Hokies, right?
Yeah, go Hokies.
Thanks, Donald. Appreciate it, man. Donald Barber, always a blast to have on, John. He's just a great guy.
Yeah, tremendous. He knows a lot about the ACC, and he obviously knows his Hokies, and detailed them pretty well as far as what they're going to be good at, and maybe some things that they need to improve at, aka the offensive line.
Yeah,
for the upcoming
in the pass game too as well. That's another big thing for Virginia Tech. But I like I like them a lot, and hopefully they'll have a big year. I'd love to see. I would honestly love Clemson to see them in the ACC championship game rather than Pittsburgh. But honestly, it looks like Clemson and Pitt are probably going to be those 2 teams in the ACC championship game. So we'll see.
I mean, I would agree. I like Clemson and Pittsburgh. I know a lot of people, say, well, Pittsburgh lost, Kenny Pickett, but they still have a pretty good contingent return on defense, which is their head coach's forte, so to speak. And I think their defense is good enough to get them back at. Clemson, obviously, we don't know exactly what's going to happen at quarterback, but we assume. I mean, we already know they have an elite defense. And a good run.
I fully expect it's going to be DJ to start the year, the Georgia Tech game, with Cade Klubnik coming in. every now and then in those first couple of games. By week 4, the Wake Forest game, especially by the North Carolina State game, week 5, we're probably going to know who that starter is going to be for sure.
What's Clemson's ACC home winning streak, 29 or something?
Yeah, they haven't lost an ACC game since that Pitt game in 16.
So really, the one team that could challenge that would be NC State. It could have been.
They got Miami at home too, but
right. But I still think they're going to beat it.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's anybody, looking at Clemson's schedule again. I just don't think there's anybody there that's going to potentially maybe NC State.
ACC down from where it was last year, or up?
It's hard to tell right now because I felt like the league itself was down last year as a whole, minus Pitt and Wake Forest. Everybody else just seemed to be really bad.
Right, because when Clemson had some issues, it was like no other team really stepped up and took the mantle of where the team would be. You thought it was going to be North Carolina State, and they lose to Wake Forest.
Yeah.
You thought maybe it was Wake Forest, and then Wake Forest comes to Clemson and gets owned pretty much the whole day. So there was no team that really stepped into that role as being the team.
Pitt was probably that team last year. Now, what are they going to be like without Kenny Pickett and without that passing attack? I mean, Narduzzi's already said he wants to run the ball more this year than he did last year. Defensively, I don't know. They'll still be pretty good, but I don't know that they'll be as good as they were last year. But I still think Pitt's probably the team to beat in the
if you look
Coastal
at
Division.
The collection of teams in the Coastal Division, I mean, you don't have a lot to work with.
Not a lot to work with. So that's kind of our ACC. We both think Clemson's probably going to win it this year. A Clemson-Pitt matchup in the ACC championship game. And then, will that be good enough for Clemson to get into a playoff? We'll kind of talk about that coming up in a little bit. We're going to kind of continue to go through all the Power 5 conferences, talk a little bit about some of the Group of 5 conferences as well, make predictions for all of those, and then talk about who we think is going to make the college football playoff coming up at the end of the show. All right, so we talked ACC. Let's get in, John, now to the Southeastern Conference, the SEC. Can the Georgia Bulldogs repeat as national champions? I know they didn't win the SEC last year, but can they come back and potentially win the SEC and win it all again in 2022?
I mean, it did take them 3/4 of the season to figure out who their quarterback was. So
yeah.
I don't know what that means, but Stetson Bennett is the guy now. So,
yeah. Especially now that what's his name? He's up at West Virginia now. Who had come from USC? JT Daniels is at West Virginia now.
And he may well end up playing East Virginia.
He'll probably be the guy in that game. But here's my hot take, John, for Georgia in 2022. Georgia will not go undefeated in the regular season. And I think there's potentially 2 games, looking at Georgia's schedule, I think there's potentially 2 games, John, that they can lose during the regular season. I think it's the opener against Oregon, and then not again until November 5th when they take on Tennessee. I would think it
would be Kentucky, though. For me, Kentucky.
Yeah. You like Kentucky to beat Georgia more so than.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a little bit better football team.
As a whole, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you, but I think Tennessee offensively is going to have a really good year.
Yeah, they've got weapons all over the place, and Hendon Hooker is a tremendous quarterback, and I just think Kentucky's defensively, I think they're coming off the Gator Bowl last year, and they had. I felt like they were sort of in that game with Georgia. I mean, I think the final score was 30-13, but it It didn't feel like some of those games.
Yeah, it always felt that game always felt like if Kentucky could kind of get something going on offense, that they had a chance. And unfortunately for them, they just didn't in that game. But if Kentucky can find a quarterback this year, which they
don't have to use a wide receiver like they did.
If they can get a quarterback this year, they might be all right.
Yeah,
they got a good defense.
I think they're always solid on the offensive and defensive lines.
Yeah.
They're always pretty good there. And
they're always pretty good in pass coverage.
I don't know if their offensive, they had a really good offensive coordinator last year, but I think he's gone now. Liam Cohen was their offensive coordinator. I'm not sure he's back, but he was doing some things, they ran some no huddle stuff and some schematically we're a little bit different on offense. So I'll be interested to see if that changes. I think he's got a pretty good NFL job, if I'm not mistaken.
But I think we both agree that Georgia's not skating through the regular season this year.
No, I think the East is a little bit better than it was last year. So
apart from Missouri and Vanderbilt,
who might be on pace to even be worse than they were.
Or Vanderbilt, yeah.
Missouri, like when do they play? That's got to be.
That's an early game, I believe. Let's see.
What would you pay to see this?
October 1st in Columbia, Missouri. The Dogs go up there.
Would you pay to see it?
No, I wouldn't pay to see Missouri.
How do they make money on that game?
Missouri fans are going to go, I guess, to watch it.
I'd give away concessions.
Yeah. Just free concessions.
I mean, jeez, that's a rough.
I'm interested to see what Missouri's schedule, who they open with. Louisiana Tech. They got Louisiana Tech to open. Kansas State, though, that's a game they lose.
Probably Abilene Christian.
Abilene Christian. They might beat Auburn. Going to beat Georgia.
Auburn's the fascinating team to me.
There you go, John. There's your game right there.
Yes.
November 19th.
Oh, that's not Alabama with the number on the side. That's New Mexico State. Okay.
New Mexico State comes down. Missouri.
So, I think the most fascinating team in the SEC, and I know I'm switching, is Auburn.
Yeah.
Because, like,
are they good?
Half their team tried to go to, like, in the transfer portal, and they're like, are they going to have anyone back?
They are not set to have a good year. They start with Mercer.
Although they have Tank Bigsby back at running back.
Could they potentially lose that Mercer game?
I mean,
they almost lost to Georgia State last year.
Mercer, last time they played, they played Auburn, I think it was in 2017. The score was like 24-10 or 13 or something. But Auburn did turn the ball over, I think, 5 or 6 times in the game.
Yeah.
But they were still, they were ranked. I think, and that game could be close. Like,
yeah, especially because I don't know that Auburn knows who their quarterback is.
Given the type of offense that Mercer runs, it's not your conventional, pro-style offense that you're going to see from week to week. So, heck, why not?
Look, San Jose State, they're getting better. That's a team that's not necessarily a pushover group of 5 team. Penn State, we know what happened in that game last year. Missouri, they could win that game. LSU, I don't know what to think about the Tigers and LSU down Baton Rouge. Brian Kelly first year. I don't know how good they're going to be.
Do we know who their quarterback is? He hasn't been since Burrow. They haven't had really a good quarterback.
No.
So that's the thing. They always have pretty good secondary. Stingley was there,
Defensively, they should be okay, right? But offensive.
Didn't was it what was the guy that they just Ed Orgeron? Didn't he pick them to win Didn't he pick Notre Dame to win the national championship? Did you?
This year?
Yeah.
No. Did he really? Interesting.
So I thought that was interesting. I mean, because that was the place that Brian Kelly
Came from.
came from.
What would Brian Kelly do if Notre Dame won it all this year without him? Would he claim credit for that national championship?
Probably, yeah.
Like those were all my players.
Even though he left like in the middle of the night, he was sure then he was going to be back the next year. That's got to be a whole weird dynamic because I haven't looked at it, but I just wonder how many guys that LSU lost. How many guys was he able to retain from going to the transfer portal, or did they have a lot of guys
From LSU?
Because I mean, that's a whole shady situation, right?
Probably less guys than the basketball team had.
Well, when you lose your whole team, yeah. Which is amazing because I heard like Matt McMahon replaced his team in like a month and a half with all transfer guys. But that tells you a little bit different dynamic in
I
basketball.
was trying to figure out who LSU's starting quarterback is going to be this year, but this isn't wanting to come up. Real quick, let's stay in the West. Obviously, Alabama won the SEC last year. They made it to the national championship where they eventually lost to Georgia. Nick Saban made the off-the-cuff kind of remark the other week that last year was a rebuilding year for the Tide. Are they the clear-cut favorite to win it all, win the SEC, and win everything this year?
I mean,
they've got the Heisman Trophy.
I think they're the favorite to win the SEC. I'm not so sure I would go say clear-cut favorite to win the national title.
Okay.
Because I think Ohio State's going to be really good.
Really good.
So that if this were last year and they had this team last year, I think they would be.
And there's nobody on Alabama's schedule. Look, they're going to beat Texas week 2. That there's no denying that. Texas A&M. Real quick, another one of my hot takes for this year. Texas A&M is not going to be very good. I think Texas A&M is an 8-4 team at best. I just don't get. I don't think the hype is there with A&M. They don't have a quarterback.
True. And whatever his name was,
Calzada, he's gone. He's moved on.
Calzone or whatever his name is, he moved on. But he did, that he sort of had that. For Western Carolina fans out there listening, that Justin Clark moment where he rose up and beat an Appalachian State when he beat Alabama last year. So I feel like Texas A&M is one of those teams that only shows up for the games where there's some national acclaim to the matchup, like Alabama or other team, but then they get just drilled. Was it Arkansas that beat?
Arkansas beat them, and I expect Arkansas probably beats them again this year. It would not surprise me at all if Ole Miss beats them. LSU could potentially shock them at the end of the year as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I could see Ole Miss. I could even see Mississippi State.
I think Ole Miss is the second best team in the West.
Really? Okay, so Ole Miss and Arkansas, I could see either one of them finishing ahead of Texas.
Of Texas A&M.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think Texas A&M maybe finishes 3rd or 4th in the West.
I think Arkansas's deal last year was their schedule. They won a couple of those games, but they just couldn't. It was like
then they got
murderers.
Yeah, then because they had Georgia in there, they just
they were what 4 or 5-0
going into Athens. They were like number 8 in the country this year, though. I mean, the Arkansas schedule sets up a lot better for them. I mean,
they'll beat Cincinnati.
They'll beat South Carolina. They'll beat Missouri State. They probably will beat Texas A&M, and then it's Alabama. But then they could beat Mississippi State. They could beat BYU.
If they reel off a bunch of wins, let's see, what is that? 4 or 5-0 going out.
Going in, that's 4-0 going into Tuscaloosa. No, that game's in Fayetteville. The Tide going to town, going to Fayetteville.
Which stadium are they? Do they still play in two stadiums? They have
No, I think they only play in
Remember when they did that, like
War Memorial, yeah,
yeah,
down in Little Rock, yeah. I don't think they do that anymore.
but like it's still a tough place to play.
Yeah, it's a good road environment in the SEC. But yeah, Alabama's probably the clear-cut favorite to win the SEC. Texas A&M, I don't get the hype for
I think
them.
the October 15th game, that BYU, I don't like that game.
At
Like, why are you
BYU
playing that game?
in Provo. That's
That's probably a loss.
potentially for the Hogs. We got to talk. We got to talk about South Carolina, John. Year 2, Shane Beamer down in Columbia. This is a team that they went 7-6 last year, won the Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl,
And
kind of exceeded expectations in
I
Shane
don't think
Beamer's
you've
first
arrived
year.
until you've had a bath that just has success
Written all over it. But they exceeded expectations in year 1 last year. Can they follow that up with even more improvement? For
Here's
me,
my hot take. They're going to lose to Georgia State.
John's calling it right now. South Carolina loses the opener to Georgia State.
Why not? I mean, they should have beaten Auburn.
They should have beaten Auburn.
Well, I mean, they return, I don't know, 18 or 19 starters, something like that. And they
Got a really good quarterback.
Yeah, so played, and we had a chance to see play
Yep.
Furman, and who I think is just really will be coming into his own this year as a senior quarterback. So I'm going to say, if they lose that game, though, do they get the 6 wins?
Yeah, that me and John were talking about this before the show started about South Carolina's schedule. I think the ceiling for them is 6-6. I don't see a way that South Carolina gets over 6 wins during the regular season. And if you're right, if they lose to Georgia State, there's no way they get the 6 wins.
I mean, Georgia State beat Tennessee.
Because if they lose to Georgia State, they're going 0-3 to start the year.
Right. And then you probably beat Charlotte and South Carolina State. You're going to win those games. And then
Kentucky,
you got
that's
to
a
go to
loss.
Kentucky, and I don't know if in my lifetime they beat.
And as much as I think Texas A&M is overhyped, they're going to lose that game. They'll beat Missouri. They'll beat Vanderbilt. But the big one, again, comes with Florida on November 12th.
I think they probably. I mean, it's tough. I don't think. Well, obviously, Missouri and Vanderbilt are awful. So, but Florida's not really in that category. I think it's just a transition.
It's too early to tell what Billy
I think
Napier.
they probably. I'm going to go ahead and say South Carolina probably beats Florida.
Okay. All right. So they're at, let's see, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're at 6 wins if they do that. They're at 5 wins. They're at 5 wins. If they lose to Georgia State, they're at 5 wins.
Right.
Going to, so they would have to beat Tennessee or Clemson in order to get.
They get Tennessee at home. So in other words, they're going to have to beat Tennessee at home.
Yeah.
So they're probably not going to Clemson. So. I'll say that, but I do think that's not quite the game it was going to be a couple of years ago. I still think Clemson's clearly the favorite. I'm saying that it could be a decent game now, whereas 3 or 4 years ago maybe that wouldn't be the case.
I don't know. Shane Beamer, year 2, I think they'll probably be right about where they were last year, 6-6. They do get a bowl game, maybe.
It's okay. So it's easy. It's not easy, but the first step, and Furman's basketball coach made a good point. Bob Ritchie a few years ago, where it's easy to make that jump from 8 wins to 20, but it's the next step you've got to make is the hardest. So I feel like that was South Carolina football. They took a giant leap forward last year by getting to a bowl game, but those last 2 or 3 wins, that's a really difficult jump.
Getting to 8,
right,
getting
right.
to 8 is going to be the tough part for Shane Beamer in the next couple of years. And look, once he gets his guys in there, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be doing a pretty good job in recruiting so far. So we'll see. Anybody else in the SEC? We both think Tennessee's going to be pretty good offensively.
Yeah.
I worry though about all the off the field stuff with the Jeremy Pruitt situation and the recruiting and violations and stuff like that.
They got I didn't see what all the penalties were that came from that, or like if they were penalized a certain amount of recruits, but
you wonder how much of an effect that's going to have.
I feel like that was really unfortunate for Coach Heupel, who I really liked, by going back to his days as a quarterback at Oklahoma. But that's just a really unlucky situation for him to be in, to really have to handle. And what amazes me is in such a short amount of time that Pruitt did that much damage.
Yeah. All right, so who's going to the SEC championship game, John?
Alabama, and
I still think Georgia will get there, but Georgia will have one or two losses.
I think Georgia will get there.
Georgia will have one or two losses in the regular season, so a third loss to Alabama in the SEC championship knocks them out of any sort of playoff fight. But I think Alabama wins the SEC.
Yeah, I would agree. Even with two losses, if Georgia were to have two losses, as you said, I still think they'd try to shoehorn them into the playoffs.
Potentially. So that's the SEC. We still got the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the Pac-12 that we're going to talk about here in just a second. All right, so we've done our ACC predictions, our SEC predictions as well, John. Let's go to the other three Power 5 conferences, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the Big 12. We'll start with the Big 12 because they're kind of one that I find interesting this year. Not on new faces, new coaching, especially at Oklahoma with Brent Venables now in Norman taking over that Sooners. Can Brent Venables get Oklahoma back on top? There's a lot of love for Texas coming into this year. What do you think about the Longhorns?
Fool's gold.
Yeah.
They obviously have talent. I mean, I just don't know what they've been through. A lot of times they make the coaching change too early, I think. And I think Steve Sarkisian is a good coach.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what the right fit for a coach is there because it's such a different. I feel like Texas is a lot different animal than a lot of college coaching jobs.
The booster base out there is
unreasonable.
Yeah.
Even at a place like Alabama, you have. Then they lost to Louisiana Monroe, and what was it, Saban's first year?
Mm-hmm.
They weren't great, but I mean, at Texas, they'd be ready to fire the guy. I mean, I'm serious. Like, there would be some heat on him after one season.
Charlie Strong got 3 or 4 years.
What's his name? I don't even know.
I can't think of his name, but he only got 2 or 3 or 4 years. Tom Herman.
I don't even know if he reemerged anywhere after that.
I don't know where he's at either. Sark is is this his second year or third year?
I think it's his second, right?
This is his second year.
And obviously they have
time's ticking on his clock. Then you'd think, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it's already started. It's like countdown to Armageddon. What were they, 5-7 a year ago? Was that the record?
I believe so.
And they did not. I mean, even I want to say Tom Herman took them to a bowl.
Well, you remember they won. They went to the Big 12 championship and lost against Oklahoma that first year,
right.
And then beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's where Bevo tried to attack the Bulldog. That's right.
And then it was downhill ever since then. Look, Texas, they're going to lose to Alabama. Maybe they can make that a competitive game. I don't know. They'll beat UL Monroe. They'll beat UTSA. Maybe they'll beat Texas Tech. West Virginia. That's a game that they could lose. Oklahoma's a game that they could lose. Iowa State's a game that they're definitely going to lose to Oklahoma State. Kansas State's a game they could potentially lose. TCU, I don't know what to think about them.
TCU's never easy.
They're never easy. They might probably. I will say they will probably beat Kansas, although
Kansas is
they're getting better.
They're getting better.
And they're going to lose to Baylor.
Yeah.
Like that's that.
The crazy thing is, when would you have ever said, well, I mean, Baylor L.
To me, Baylor is the team to beat in the Big 12.
I mean, but it's like hilarious if you ever say that about Texas. Baylor.
Texas, Oklahoma State and Baylor. Those are the two teams to me that they just seem to be on top right now. Brent Venables will probably get Oklahoma back up there, but I don't know that he's going to do it year one.
Oklahoma State's kind of the Texas A&M of the Big 12, right? They underwhelm.
Yeah.
Always underwhelm.
They were a foot short last year of beating Baylor in the Big 12 championship.
But it's always a foot short, a point, a missed extra point, something.
Yeah.
They always have really good.
And if they beat Baylor in that game, they'd probably go to the playoffs over Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah. They probably do, yeah.
Foot short. Missed it by that much.
They're great. They've had some great offensive talent that's come through that program. Oklahoma State, they had that big win in the night. Was it last year they had the win over Boise State, and it was kind of controversial in the non-conference?
Yes.
And that kind of propelled them. They had a pretty good start, to last year. And that game was, I want to say there was a penalty where Boise State returns like a fumble for a touchdown, and they call it back. It takes like an hour to review it. And this was it was pretty late at night. I remember watching, I was just like, this is taking an unreasonable amount of time to review this.
No, it wasn't last year. It was last year. It was last year. You're right. That Boise State game right there.
And so they ended up getting some momentum.
They won by 1 point.
That's right. Maybe it was a block. I can't remember. But it was a good football game, and that game I think they got off to 4-5-0 or something like that, and didn't really they only had one loss in that Baylor game, right?
I believe so. Yeah. The Iowa State. They lost to Iowa State in the regular season and then lost to Baylor.
Oh, they're at Jack Tri-State.
It's a tough place to play.
And
Oklahoma State always seems to go in there when they're highly ranked and lose to Iowa State.
Kansas game, 55-3.
And that's a Kansas team, John, that beat
it's weird in that league? Texas Tech.
Yeah,
they can literally lose 60, whatever they lost to.
Kansas went 2-10, and one of their wins was against Texas.
That's enough to get a coach fired in Austin. Just ask Charlie Strong.
Yeah, Texas Tech. That's a team. They went 7-6 last year. They're a weird team. They're a weird program as well. TCU, same way.
Oh, it feels like it's been a while.
Gary Patterson, Sonny Dykes is in TCU now because Gary Patterson's gone.
Sonny Dykes, former Texas Tech guy, right?
Mm-hmm. Former SMU guy.
Texas Tech. Go back to I think maybe his dad is Spike Dykes. I don't know.
Yep.
Sonny Dykes.
Yep, Spike Dykes.
Yeah.
That's his dad.
So there's some That's an interesting hire because from what I know about Sonny Dice, he played in that offense. Remember when Texas Tech had like Mike Leach and I think Sonny Dice may have been his quarterback at one point. Anyway, but it'll be TCU's never been known as like an offensive juggernaut. They've usually been
always been defensively defensive team when Gary Patterson was there.
But if you look back at the years in Texas Tech, they've never really put a premium on the work on their defensive side of the ball.
Nope.
So I wonder if that takes a dip now at TCU.
Especially when Patrick Mahomes was running around.
Right.
Out in Lubbock.
I mean, you like Cliff Kingsbury. They're like, I don't know, they're like Hawaii when it comes to quarterback.
Yeah. There was a game, or I saw a clip of something on Twitter of a Hawaii game from like 2005.
Jimmy Chang or something.
Colt Brennan, man. Colt Brennan. My prediction for the Big 12, John, I've got Baylor beating Oklahoma State again in the Big 12 championship.
I actually have it, but I have it the reverse. I have Oklahoma State actually.
Oh, actually doing it this year.
Yeah, actually living up to expectations and not losing that game by 1 point or.
So do you think Oklahoma State runs the table? Do you think there's anywhere there for the Cowboys to drop a game? Watch out for that Central Michigan. You remember the last time those two teams?
You know, the Chippewas, they come in there with a chip on their shoulder. I mean, that's
Arizona State, that's no push through walkover game either. But they'll probably win both those games.
Arizona State is going to be decent.
They'll beat their Arkansas Pine Bluff.
The bowl Eagles.
McLean State, they might lose that Baylor game in the regular season and then beat them in the rematch.
Okay, so looking at their schedule, it actually it sets up nicely because you really don't have the last 3 games of the schedule are pretty tough. I mean, like the good thing about it is they've got 2 of those at home. Iowa State, they haven't been all that successful against anywhere, but they get them at home.
They'll either lose to Baylor or lose to Oklahoma on the road. One of those 2 games they'll drop.
Yeah, I'd say more likely that they would lose
at
Oklahoma. But I mean, they could lose both of them.
They could. And still get in.
Right. And then I feel like they'll beat West Virginia, but that's always a tricky matchup too.
Because Oklahoma,
that's all right. I mean,
first year with new head coach,
a new court. Wow.
I mean, what they're going to be like defensively is going to be interesting to see what Brent Venables brings in there year 1.
They were actually pretty good defensively last year.
Yeah. Kansas State, that's always a team that they struggle with. TCU, they always seem to struggle with.
I think it would be more interesting to see what Oklahoma's like.
At Iowa State, that's a tough, tricky game. At West Virginia, for them, those are 2 tricky games.
At West Virginia, that's
that's tough.
Like and it, I mean, I feel like if you ask the Big 12 head coaches, what's the one game that you can't? It's an unpredictable environment to go into. I feel like almost in unison they would probably answer West Virginia.
Yeah.
Because it's so unlike I think any of the other Big 12 atmospheres that you go into. The hostility.
Yeah. All right. So you've got Oklahoma State beating Baylor. I've got Baylor beating Oklahoma State in the Big 12. All right. Let's go to the Big 10, John. We'll start with Michigan. Can the Wolverines repeat as Big 10 champs and make another playoff push?
I almost feel like last year was their one opportunity and they blew it against Georgia. Because now, I mean, you got the win over Ohio State, and a very good Ohio State team that you really hadn't had all that much success against. I think Brady Hoke was the last coach to have beaten
them. Yeah. don't know that they're going to do it this year, man. They got to go to the shoe.
And just to think about how good, I think probably Ohio State has arguably the best receivers in the country, maybe.
Yeah.
So.
He had a good quarterback.
I mean, a really good quarterback, right.
Stroud is an excellent quarterback.
I actually think that if you were going to make a national championship favorite, it'd be 1A, 1B, with Alabama being 1A, and probably 1B being Ohio State. So, that being said, I just don't see a way that Michigan finishes.
Michigan probably will be undefeated going into that. You'll probably have.
I don't think like the Big Ten's not that strong this year, right?
Michigan State will be good. I think Mel Tucker, what he's done up in East Lansing, Sparty will be pretty good. And that's a rivalry game that's always, you never know which way.
Michigan usually loses now.
Yeah, little brother has gotten the best of big brother in that rivalry.
Ever since that weird punt game.
And Michigan going to Kinnick Stadium in early October, that's never easy either. That's always loud. Yeah, that's always a tricky game for Wolverines fans as well. So
Maryland's just a game I hate. It's just like
it's an early home.
Maybe it's just because the helmet on there probably has a lot to do with it. But like
the state flag.
Was it last year that Tuiasosopo's brother threw like 7 interceptions? Was that Michigan?
No, I don't remember what game Tulia Tagovailoa.
Or I said Washington. One of those like weird last names that starts with a T. But anyway, he threw like
6 or 7. I think it was the Iowa game. I think it was the Maryland-Iowa game last year.
Yeah, it was. And then like he went from one week he had like the highest passer efficiency rating, and then like he went from that to like leading the nation in interceptions like 2 weeks later.
All right.
Fun Maryland story for you.
Michigan, I think Michigan probably is undefeated going into the Ohio State game. I think Ohio State and Michigan will be undefeated when they meet in the game at the end of the year. Ohio State, though, I think is going to run the table and win the Big Ten.
I mean, is there a game on Ohio State's schedule that's
Michigan State?
Do you think that's tougher than at Penn State when they end up?
Yeah, because I think Michigan State. I think Michigan State's a better team though right now than Penn State is.
Does Michigan State have the running back who
Walker?
Yes, who was just
beast last year.
Is he back?
I think so.
Like his first 2 carries against. He had like 140 yards with 2 carries.
At Northwestern. That'll be an interesting game. At Northwestern.
For who?
Ohio State. That'll be an interesting game.
Once they get the special teams figured out, the game will be all right.
No, I mean Michigan State. Penn State. Look, that's a tough environment, but I don't think Penn State as a team is anywhere near where Ohio State is right now. If they had to go to Wisconsin, that might be a tougher game.
Down a little bit. Let's see. Do they play? No, they don't play. I was gonna say if they played Drummer Boy, Big Drum, Purdue.
We'll find out a lot.
I think Purdue's gonna be pretty good.
I think they will too, but I don't see anybody upsetting Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin probably wins that division, unless you think Purdue.
I think Purdue wins it.
You think you got Ohio State, Purdue in the Big Ten? That's a good matchup, though. What if Purdue won that game?
It would be beating the drum on the way back to West Lafayette.
Not Ohio State.
Drew Brees somewhere would be smiling. Remember when the last time they've really been really, really good, he was the quarterback.
Yeah, early 2000s.
They won. I guess they won the Rose Bowl.
Did they go?
Yeah, they played. Was it? They might have played Washington. Purdue and Washington.
What a Rose Bowl game. Purdue, Washington. We'll find out a lot about Ohio State.
I was doing like Napoleon Kaufman was Washington's running back. I think.
We'll find out a lot find out a lot about the Buckeyes week 1, though. Notre Dame.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think Notre Dame wins that game, but I think we'll know more about Penn State.
Know more about how bad or good or decent Notre Dame is than you will.
All right, so you got.
Then they got 2 layups against Toledo and Arkansas State.
Do you have Ohio State beating Purdue then?
Yes.
All right. I've got Ohio State beating Wisconsin in the Big Ten. So let's go Pac-12, John. That's an interesting conference that nobody's really talking about anymore.
No one's really talking about Oregon State right now, and they were one of the worst teams in the country, like literally 2 years ago.
Now it's Washington State is one of the.
But Oregon State's actually kind of good now.
Yeah, they are. They're probably the second best team in the North.
Right.
Behind Oregon.
Which is kind of, I mean, that's kind of a turnaround story that maybe has flown under the radar.
That'll be a good game. Oregon State, Boise State
Mm-hmm.
in the opening weekend. That'll be it.
Up there at Regional Stadium in
Corvallis
Corvallis will be rocking.
I tell you what, though, I like Utah. I think Utah is a team that not a lot of people are really giving a lot of credit to this year. They open up. They got to come to the Swamp down in Gainesville to take on the Gators
They
opening
should
weekend.
have a live cam on Urban Meyer. Maybe not.
Who's Urban Meyer pulling for in that game? That's a big question.
Probably, I don't know.
Their schedule just sets up so good. Other than the at Oregon game, their schedule just sets
How
up
bad,
so
speaking of
nice.
which, how bad is Colorado now?
Yeah. Well, they've been bad. They had like
I mean,
one
they were
good year.
decent.
They had like one good year a couple years
Yeah.
ago.
I think that might have been like right after Mike McMahon got there, and then he's no longer the coach now. So they're like 2 coaches removed. Arizona's awful.
Arizona's bad. Stanford, I don't know what's going on with them.
Although Jed Fish is trying to turn things around in Tucson. Just one of my favorites. I just had to get a
Jet Fish reference. That's enough. UCLA and USC are on their way out of the Pac-12, so who knows what.
No one really knows what Washington State has. Probably not.
No, not much. That's probably a 1-11 Washington State.
How about this? North Dakota State, don't they play Oregon this year?
I don't know.
Is that not?
No.
Okay.
No, they do not.
Maybe it's a few years.
Let's see.
They do play Eastern Washington, though, and that's not easy.
Do they? No, I don't think they do.
I thought I was just going to click on.
I clicked on Eastern Washington, but they
Play Oregon.
play Oregon, not North Dakota.
Right. Sorry, yeah.
They do play Oregon.
Which is kind of a trick. I mean, I think they'll win the game. I'm just saying it's not an easy SES.
Yeah, and Oregon's got they played Georgia in that first game, and then they've got BYU. That's a tough one.
BYU, where does that game?
That game is in Autzen Stadium. That's in Eugene. Utah at home. Oregon State in Corvallis.
Because I think BYU is one of the best schools.
And the way the Pac-12 is doing it this year, there's no divisions now. It's all the
Stanford's awful.
top 2 teams.
In fact, they might be making a posting change.
Yeah, they open with Colgate.
The Raiders.
Week 1 against Colgate. It's a toothpaste.
And the tree.
Toothpaste and the tree.
I'll be interested to see. Southern Cal is a team that's fascinating.
Lincoln Riley's first year. What are they going to do? They open with Rice, and then they got Stanford. Fresno State.
Remember a few years ago when they had Slovis and they had like 5 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Southern Cal. Like, literally, they had the best depth at that position in the country.
But they haven't.
Those guys transferred.
They haven't really been good though. I mean, they've been competitive, but they've not been.
They were good offensively.
They haven't been what you think USC since Sam Darnold when they won the Rose Bowl against Penn State.
Obviously, I mean, who would have thought that somebody had to do a documentary on Clay Helton and him going from LA to Statesboro, Georgia, and then Lincoln Riley literally going from Norman to LA. Both of those are interesting dynamics, I think.
And I just don't know, especially now that we know USC is going to be moving to the Big Ten in a couple of years. That high-powered offense that Lincoln Riley, how's that going to translate to the Big Ten? I mean, Ohio State does it, but Ohio State can also play defense.
I feel like that if you were to compare a team to what maybe Coach Riley wants to do in the Big Ten right now is what Indiana was a couple of years ago when they were pretty good, but like they couldn't keep anybody
healthy,
and
especially a quarterback.
Yeah, a quarterback, and I'm not so sure that obviously he couldn't determine where they were going to move or not. That was an administrative decision.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that that'll translate like what he wants to do in that conference.
I think Utah is the team to beat in the Pac-12 this year. I just really like the Utes.
How would he, man?
I may surprise you later on in the show with Utah, but I've got Utah winning the Pac-12 over Oregon.
I have Oregon winning it, but I mean I could totally see Utah. That would be a shocking.
Yeah, I mean they did it last year. They're the reigning champs in the Pac-12, so I think they could do it again. They almost beat Ohio State in that Rose Bowl game last year. It was a really good Rose Bowl game between those two teams. So we'll see, John. It's going to be interesting. I think the Big 12, the Big 10, and the Pac-12 are all fascinating leagues this year. The Big 12 and the Pac-12 more so because really anybody can win.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really good.
There's no dominant team
in either of those two leagues. But let's take a quick 1-minute break, John. We'll come back and then we'll hit the group of 5 teams. A lot of fun stuff in the group of 5 conferences to kind of look forward to as well. This is the Spread Podcast. All right, John, we've gone through the entire Power 5 conferences, the ACC, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, and the Big 10, made our predictions of what we think is going to happen in those. Let's get to the group of 5 now. People don't really want to talk about the group of 5 a whole lot because smaller schools, not the great level of competition that you get at the Power 5. But I think the group of 5 almost, are more entertaining to watch than some of the Power 5 leagues.
And without the transition that has taken place, I would venture to argue, I guess I wouldn't venture to argue, but I would argue that the Sun Belt has made the most attractive additions.
They have, and I want to get to the Sun Belt. Well, I should save the Sun Belt for last because I think that's the most intriguing of the group of 5 conferences. Let's actually start with the MAC, because here's a conference, John, because I love watching Tuesday night MACtion.
Even though it's bad football.
Yeah, it's awful football, but it's so much fun.
It's what you might imagine a Tuesday night game might look like if you were, envisioning it and pretending 2 teams in your head.
It's just so, Miami of Ohio, Northern Illinois, Ohio.
That big E
Kent State.
Eastern Michigan helmet strikes fear into its opponents.
Akron.
Speaking of which, how many of these teams have a better on the side of their helmet.
Central Michigan, Miami of Ohio, Eastern Michigan.
Wow. Look at whose schedule is this?
This is Northern Illinois. I'm looking at.
They open up with the Eastern Illinois Panthers. That ought to be a great game.
Remember, South Carolina opened with them last year.
One of the worst teams in our state.
They played Tulsa. The MAC's just, I don't know, it's just always one of those leagues. And every year, it always seems like.
I'll never pick Ohio to win.
But anybody has a realistic opportunity to win, realistic shot at winning this conference.
I mean, if you're going to say a team that has been, I think Western Michigan's been good, off and on, been a
pretty good. Buffalo off and on has been good.
Although
Toledo.
They were only 4-8 last year.
Yeah. Toledo here recently has been kind of a team to beat in that conference.
Yeah, the Rockets have been on, they've been on trending an exponential ride towards space.
We're not going to spend too much on the MAC here, but it's just always fun to talk about it. I'm actually going
to tell you who's bad is the Zips, and they never really are.
What did you say their record was last year? Like 3-9?
Yes. And they had, I think, what was it? They were the worst in the country in scoring defense.
Yeah, can we look at their schedule and see? Okay, they opened the year with the St. Francis Red Flash.
Wow, that is a great name game. The Red Flash and the Zips. You just don't. I mean, that is a mascot dream.
And then they go through a gauntlet of Michigan State, Tennessee, and then Liberty.
Is St. Francis a hospital?
Yeah. Here in South Carolina, here in Greenville, it is.
Infocision Stadium there.
In Akron, Ohio. Bowling Green, the Falcons.
Man, and they're almost as bad as their color scheme. Orange
and brown.
With, I don't know, that looks like Atari graphics on the side of their helmet. With their logo.
Bowling Green. We're not going to spend much time on this, but John, who's winning the MAC this year? I've got Northern Illinois.
I went with Toledo.
Toledo, okay, it's a good pick. I like that. Going with the Rockets. All right, let's move to how about the Mountain West?
Who was it that somebody said that they would be an underdog on Northern Illinois? Was that Vanderbilt's coach? Somebody played them and said that they would be an underdog. I think it was. Pretty sure that's right.
Let's go Mountain West. Let's go Mountain West here.
A little bit of an upgrade.
Was it San Diego State? Did they end up winning? Did they win it last year, or was it Fresno State? I think San Diego State won it, right?
Yeah.
I think they're the defending champs.
Fresno State was really good, though. Because remember
Fresno State is really, really good.
There was a game, was it early in the season last year that Fresno State almost beat
UCLA.
Yeah, that's right. Right, yeah. And they knocked their quarterback.
They've got USC on their schedule this year. They've got Oregon State on their schedule.
That's a good game. Oregon State.
Yeah, those are two good games for them. How about Boise? Boise is a team that's kind of been, they have.
That's my team I picked to kind of rebound this year.
You like Boise?
Yeah.
You taking the Broncos to win the Mountain West?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna stick with the Bulldogs, Fresno State. I'm gonna go with them this year. I really like. They got a really good quarterback coming back again this year. They've got
I think their defensive line is maybe one of the better ones in the group of five.
Yeah, I think Boise's going to be good. That Oregon State game to open the year is going to be fantastic. UTEP, that's a team in Conference USA that we can talk about.
You remember when Fresno played Uconn last year? What an awful football game. I'm telling you, I wasted at least an hour and 45 minutes on that game. It was a real early game, and Uconn was so bad. I mean, granted, Fresno State was really good too, but it was just.
Can we need to see what Uconn is Uconn going to win a game this year?
Over there at Rentschler Field. Didn't they have a Hail Mary or something? Didn't they play was it somebody?
Harvard.
Right, yes, Harvard. That's right.
I'm pretty sure. Let's go back to Uconn's 2021. I know we're getting off topic here. You're picking Boise State to win the Mountain West, right? I'm picking Fresno State. No, it's Yale. They beat Yale. They beat Yale. That was their one win. Was the Yale Hail Mary.
And the announcer was like, "There is still a God in heaven," or something.
They lost to Holy Cross last year, John.
Yes. Who is the offensive coordinator of Holy Cross? Justin Roper is now the offensive. So he led Holy Cross to a
FBS win, yeah.
Uconn last year.
So Uconn opens up. Let's see. Let's get Uconn's schedule pulled up here for 2022.
I think it's trying to pinpoint Storrs, Connecticut.
All right, so they open up on the road to Utah
State.
State. Yeah, that's a tough game. Lost.
That is
Central Connecticut.
That is one of the worst teams. I'm telling you, might be the worst football game in America. Central Connecticut State against Uconn. That is undoubtedly the worst football game.
And you're going to try to find that stream somewhere, aren't you? So you want it.
Yes. Because I want you, look at what was Central Connecticut's record last year. I feel like they haven't been very good in a long time. But I can't.
All right, this is
completely wrong.
We'll take a little detour here.
Yeah.
But this is good, though. This is good quality.
Right
this is good quality entertainment.
The Blue Devils.
The Blue Devils. They play Sacred Heart this year.
Well, but, they're getting votes.
Sacred Heart. All right, 4-7. Central Connecticut was 4-7. They were
They're
4.
bad,
They were 4-3 in the NEC.
They probably beat Wagner.
They did 21-19.
Yes,
They
Wagner.
beat.
That was a great football game.
They lost to the Southern Connecticut Owls.
Yes. I don't even know what division that is.
They beat Merrimack.
Hmm.
They beat Bryant, and they beat St. Francis.
Whenever you can just go out and beat a St. Francis and a Merrimack, those are resumes.
They lost to Duquesne, who Duquesne is opening up their season against Florida State this year.
Yes. They'll be duking it out.
So there you go. There's a little bit of Central Connecticut.
There's a little bit of Connecticut football history.
69-0 that lost to Miami last year. You remember that game?
File that one because it's probably going to be a good game between Central.
You got like Uconn.
The Blue Devils. The Blue Devils and Huskies, and they'll be playing in football. Give me the Blue Devils and Huskies.
Fantastic.
1999 national championship game? Basketball? No, it's a football game in 2020.
It's too good, too good. Let's go Conference USA. This is another interesting league, John, that some teams have moved out of Conference USA. Marshall and Old Dominion are moving out. Who do you like kind of in this conference now?
It's become a bad league all of a sudden, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of. I mean, I guess Houston,
No, sorry, this is they're in the American. Let's find Conference USA teams. I was looking at Tulsa's schedule. They're in the American.
Okay.
I was trying to find a Conference USA.
Conference USA. So now that Marshall's gone,
UAB's still there. UAB's good.
yeah, they're solid. I mean, I thought they have a little bit of a down year last year.
A little bit of a down year last year.
Was it that early game that they played? Was it Georgia where like Stetson Bennett was like 5 for 5 for 280 yards?
Yeah,
and
that was
like
that was an ugly game for them.
Yeah.
Charlotte's getting better. Charlotte's not terrible. UTEP's getting better. They were 7-6 last year. That's a team on the rise.
UTSA.
UTSA is another. I think they are the defending champs.
Yeah, they remember they started like 9-1.
Yeah, they were really on a hot streak last year. The Roadrunners. I think who else is?
Rice is not on that.
Rice is not good.
North Texas is not.
Now that Marshall's gone, though, I think I've got to kind of stick with UAB as the team to beat.
Yeah, I mean you're not going to go too far from UAB because like there's a lot there. While there's some improving teams,
Louisiana Tech's okay.
There's still some really really bad teams in there.
Yeah, Florida International, FIU, FAU.
The Owls.
FAU.
What is it? FIU's the Golden Panthers
yes.
or something?
Remember when them in Miami had like a brawl in the middle of the field during the game?
Just like out of nowhere. Yeah. These are disturbing scenes. You know, like, that's bad. Like, you really don't know FIU for a lot other than
that.
Right. Which is.
They play at Silva Stadium, I know that much. Ricardo Silva Stadium.
It sounds like a soccer stadium.
It looks like a soccer stadium.
It probably is a soccer stadium.
Yeah. Probably is a dual sports stadium.
They probably have a really good soccer program.
I don't know, that's something we'd have to look up.
Probably won't be found in this show. But by the way, Wofford beat Clemson in the next division.
There you go. Western Kentucky, that's another team that's had some really good success.
They had, what was the quarterback?
Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, from Houston Baptist. Who was one of the.
And he set all sorts of FBS passing records.
Yeah, he set about half of them against App State in the bowl game last year.
Yep.
Sorry. I just said I didn't do that, but we got Hilltoppers.
Yeah, I'm going UAB. I'm gonna stick with the Blazers.
I'm gonna go Middle Tennessee.
They're good. They're okay.
They're okay.
North Texas.
They've been less mean and more green.
Louisiana Tech is not a team that's very good either.
Yeah, home of Terry Bradshaw. Actually, East Tennessee State beat them. The Grantland Rice Bowl.
All you Dynasty fans will know Phil Robertson was the starting quarterback ahead of Terry Bradshaw at Louisiana Tech. Actually quit football, thus Terry Bradshaw became the starting quarterback.
And then I wonder what happened to the coach.
Mm.
He didn't know Terry Bradshaw was there.
All right, so let's go American football. Cincinnati, obviously they won it last year. They went undefeated. They made the playoffs as the number 4 seed. They've lost a lot of pieces, especially at quarterback. Desmond Ritter gone. Defensive back, defensive line. A lot of questions for the Bearcats. Do they repeat as American champions before heading to the Big 12 in a couple of years?
That's a tricky conference because I think Houston's
really good.
UCF, I mean.
But they don't play Houston in the regular season.
But they do have to go to the bounce house.
They do go to the bounce house. They do go to SMU, that's a tough environment. Tulsa's a tough road game.
I mean, there's I think Central Florida's probably going to win.
You like UCF?
Mm-hmm.
Coming back from they were kind of a bit obscure the last 2 years.
They had injuries at quarterback.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think that game, was it last year where Louisville kind of got the pick six to win the game? Yeah,
they got Louisville comes to the bounce house this year. So they could potentially get some revenge there. Yeah,
I think they're just going to obliterate Georgia Tech.
They'll beat South Carolina State. They'll probably beat all 5 of those first teams.
That's not really.
Although, look, Memphis is still a team to beat in.
They'll be undefeated going into Cincinnati.
Yeah. What about ECU? Do you like the Pirates at all?
I mean, Mike Houston's, I think, done a really good job of getting them. That program had descended into just so far from where it had been. Even when you go back to, I guess it was the Skip Holtz there. They were sort of good at the beginning of the Skip Holtz era, and that's where it kind of went south for East Carolina. And they're just now getting back to, I feel like, respectability.
My team to beat, John, is actually going to be Houston. I like the Cougs and what Dana Holgerson has done down there in Houston.
He's a strange personality, I think.
Yeah, but
he works out. But like what I was going to say,
really good offense.
Yeah.
He
didn't work in West Virginia, whereas but he kind of knew that because he took the job, and you're like, well, that's kind of why would you do that? And it's worked out. Like, I think he knew his personality and what kind of job, so to speak, was best fit for him. And
Yeah.
he's found his kind of niche there in Houston.
All right, so you're taking UCF, and I've got Houston. I really like Houston, and that there's a potential that they can beat UTSA. That's a great opening game too, by the way. At UTSA in the Alamo Dome, that's a fun one to watch. They could beat Texas Tech. They'll beat Kansas. Rice, they'll beat Tulane. They'll beat Memphis is a tough game. But that's really about it as far as their schedule.
Maybe once we get more South Florida, they'll beat them.
SMU, they should beat Temple. They'll beat.
South Florida was a really tough program.
Yeah, and I hate it for Jeff Scott, who, coming from Clemson, went down there, and that's just that's a tough job to take.
And they won a little bit. Was it Charlie Strong?
Charlie Strong had a couple good years with him.
And then they had the guy I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. But he got in trouble for abusing the players.
Yeah.
So they've had some success. They had a lot of success when they made the quick jump from. They were FCS for 3 or 4 years, and then they made the quick transition to FBS, and they were pretty successful right away because football was just in that area.
Yeah.
Became really big all of a sudden because they haven't had it. But now that program's kind of, I guess, fallen victim to what everybody does, moving up to FBS level is just maintaining that level of excitement from your fan base and level of talent that you're recruiting. It's so tough, especially at the Group of 5.
All right, so final Group of 5 conference that we haven't talked about yet, John, is the Sun Belt. And I think this is the most fun, the Fun Belt, the most fun, most entertaining Group of 5 conference out there. Especially now, adding Marshall, adding Old Dominion, adding James Madison to the mix. It's going to be a really, really fun league to watch again this year. App State, man, I think is going to be the team to beat. Look, Billy Napier gone from Louisiana, who won it all last year. I think App State's poised to have another good season and be right back on top. I'm sure you also agree with that.
Yeah, I do. I'm looking forward to those first 2 games.
Man, that's North Carolina and then at Texas A&M.
Yeah, and having North Carolina come to Kid River Stadium.
Yeah, that's big.
That's pretty huge. But then, man, I actually think they'll beat North Carolina. I think the Texas A&M game I think it's a winnable game. I'm not saying
they will. Yeah, if they go in there and play like they can, that's a winnable game. They'll beat Troy. They'll beat James Madison. They'll beat the Citadel. They'll beat Texas State. Georgia State. That's a good game. They'll beat Robert Morris. At Coastal. That's a big one because I think that game will determine who wins that.
You got
that
at
division.
Coastal and at Marshall.
Back
I
to
think those
back.
are the two hardest games of the year, back to back. I think
even more so than the North Carolina Texas A&M games.
Right, I think
because this means more.
Right, but and also you've got one of those at home. You got the North Carolina game at Kid River Stadium, whereas you got both of those games on the road
and really good road environments too. Yeah.
So. And I'll tell you, I mean, Old Dominion won't be easy. They'll win that game probably, and then at Georgia Southern, even though they're down, that's always a tough. That tough stretch is really the last 4 games. But I think they probably beat. I think they probably win Coastal and Marshall, but they probably win 3 out of the last.
And Coastal's a team that's going to be interesting. They bring back a lot of pieces. They start with Army, which that's a winnable game. Right out of the gate.
And that game's
in Conway. Most of their non-conferences.
Interesting game.
They really don't have that. I mean, Georgia State, that game's at Georgia State. That's a tough game. At Marshall is going to be a tough one there. And then the App State game.
In contrast, they also have.
They could beat Virginia. That's a game they could
have
go
in
in
reverse order. So Like they play App State, and then App State plays, I guess, they'll play Marshall the week that Coastal plays, or wait.
So App State will play
Marshall.
The next week.
Right. That's what I was saying. It's like they've got the same kind of dynamic working on their schedules.
Yeah.
So.
But they've got a home and away.
Right. Where it's not
two.
back-to-back away. So.
What do you think on the other? Obviously, the East is probably the better of the two divisions.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the West, I think Louisiana's got to pretty much be the favorite there.
Even with the coaching change?
Yeah, I think so. I think Troy and South Alabama are probably the next two teams that would.
Yeah, I think South Alabama's the second team in that
I had
division.
Troy second, but you could go
Either way.
And I think there's a drop off after the top three teams, though. Like,
Texas State, not very good.
Arkansas State's not very good, and Southern Illinois and Louisiana Monroe are not good. Like Southern Miss, there's some interesting additions, though. I think that's if you're looking at it in the long run, that's a pretty good program to get, for the Sun Belt, given the tradition they have. And they haven't been really good in quite a while, but they do have a pretty good tradition to be able to gain that. And then you're getting, obviously, the FCS powers that James Madison was. So I think that's a gain for the league as well.
What do you think Marshall coming into the league first year, coming from Conference USA, do you think right out of the gate they could make a bid at potentially winning that division and going to the Sun Belt Championship? Because if they beat App State, I think they could. But
that's interesting because like last year I thought Marshall was going to be really good,
and then didn't.
They played the game at App State. That was a really good football game.
It went 7-6 last year.
So App State won that game, or was it like a pretty close game? And then right after that, East Carolina was a real head scratcher.
Marshall lost that game.
Right.
Yeah.
31-30. And then
they lost to ECU. They lost to Middle Tennessee.
I think the East Carolina game was kind of a signal that things were maybe not as, because at the beginning of the season, most people thought, well, Marshall's one of the best group of five teams.
And then they struggled with Old Dominion, that they struggled with Florida Atlantic, and then they lost to UAB. And that was pretty much UAB, and then got hammered by Western Kentucky.
Wow, yeah. And that had become, the Western Kentucky game had become a good little rivalry.
Yeah.
There was that game a few years ago that was like 66-63 or whatever. And like, that was the year. Remember, Marshall had a chance to go to at least be in the conversation for being in the.
That's one of the top group of five teams.
And they lost that game to Western Kentucky, so it took them out of that conversation. So
I think App State's the team to beat this year. I think App State's probably got the best and strongest team. So I picked App State to win the Sun Belt.
I've got them in Louisiana, and then I got them beating Louisiana.
The rematch for like the 5th year.
At least you got the same two teams, right?
So we've picked all of the conference winners, who we think is gonna win each conference. We're gonna take just a second here, real quick, and then we'll pick who we think is gonna go to the college football playoff. All right, John. So we've gone through every single FBS conference, made our predictions of who we think is going to win, kind of looked at some of the schedules and some of the teams from each conference, kind of talked a little bit about that. Who's going to the college football playoff at the end of the year? Who do you think your top 4 are going to be?
Well, I probably think Alabama.
Number 1. Let's start with number 4. Let's go. Who's your number 4 team?
I don't like to do this, but I think it's going to be. I think there's going to be 2 SEC teams again, so I'm going to go with Georgia.
Okay.
That would be my 4. My 3 would be Clemson. My 2 would be Ohio State, and my 1 would be Alabama.
I'm going to agree with you on your top 2. I think Alabama and Ohio State are 1 and 2. I think both of those teams run the table. I should think all 4 of my teams are going to be undefeated. I've got 4 13-0 conference champions that are going to run the
That would
table.
make it easy, except for the seeding part.
Yes, because I've got Georgia losing once or twice in the regular season. They'll lose to Georgia in the SEC championship game. That'll knock Georgia out. Alabama and Ohio State are, to me, the 2 best. They're going to put them in 1 and 2. I really like Utah. And I think a Utah team that runs the Pac-12 and goes 13-0 has a legitimate shot to get in. And I really think Utah could be that number 3 team. And then I think Clemson, an undefeated ACC champ, will get in at number 4. So that sets up an Alabama-Clemson semifinal and an Ohio State-Utah semifinal. For you and Alabama-Georgia, I don't know that they would do that if they just met in the SEC championship game. But I could also see
to get them both in, they absolutely
would. And in Ohio State Clemson, we've seen that game several times throughout the playoff as well. But I mean, we agree, 3 of the 4 teams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see them putting Georgia in, especially if Georgia has 2 losses.
I mean, I think it's a conspiracy. So I think
ESPN's gonna do whatever they have to do to
get a second SEC team in.
Yeah.
So that's just my. You don't have to like my conspiracy.
All right. So what's your national championship game matchup?
I've got. So I have Alabama beating Georgia,
okay.
And I have Ohio State
beating Clemson. So Alabama, Ohio State, who wins?
Ohio State.
Oh, you're taking the Buckeyes as your 2022 national champions.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Alabama and Ohio State as well in the national championship game. Alabama will win the national championship.
I mean, I don't like either of those.
I don't like that either, but that kills me as a Clemson fan. But yeah, Alabama. I've got Alabama as my favorite to win it all this year.
That's a depressing way to end the show.
Yeah, we need to find something lighter to end the show on, right? Like, who was the worst team in college football of all of last year?
Yes, and that is
Would you go Akron or New Mexico State?
God, see, and this is.
Or UNLV? UNLV was pretty bad too, though.
Well, I mean, you could have like a Final Four of those teams. I think you could throw, like, what I want to do with college football is make a playoff between the absolute worst teams in the country. Because I would be.
Connecticut, Uconn, that's one of them.
Right. Vanderbilt. Like, and you could have a last 4 in of the worst teams. You don't want to be on the bubble there, the last 4 out. Like, there would never be a last 4 out of that. So
let's look. How about New Mexico State, John?
What's in New Mexico and New Mexico State? So I can.
October 15th. That's on Flow Sports.
Good. You'll have to pay like $25 on Flow Sports. It's so awesome. And the stream, like, buffers and all kinds of stuff.
But you're going to watch it, aren't you?
Yes.
You're going to pay that $25.
It's worth every penny to watch. The battle for the hourglass, or whatever they call it.
New Mexico versus
like
New
sand
Mexico
through an hourglass.
So good.
It's in
UMass. There's another one, John. UMass.
Oh my goodness, that's it. McCord Alumni Stadium. There.
Oh man, they play at Rensler Field there.
There's some great names. You got Centennial Bank Stadium there in Arkansas State. There in Jonesboro, where a lot of worthy opponents have.
Yulman Stadium. That's in New Orleans, Tulsa.
Yulman. I wonder if
Glass Bowl.
Yeah, the Glass Bowl. We all live in glass houses and glass bowls.
No throwing stones in Toledo.
no throwing a stone at the Glass Bowl. Seeing like Reinerson Stadium.
Eastern Michigan.
Michigan.
Yeah, that's a good one.
which,
Waldo Stadium, that's Western Michigan. That's a good Schumann Stadium.
do you have to find Waldo and Waldo Stadium?
There's just one
The
person.
guy with the red striped
Yeah.
shirt.
It's gonna be good, but we are just
I don't know though. Infocision Stadium.
That's a
might
good
be-
one.
I gotta go look. What does Infocision do?
That's a good question. Let's find out what that sponsor. Look that up, John. Look that up. You got your phone or something. Mine computer.
Let me look
feels
up
slow.
Infocision Stadium.
It's
So-
vital that everybody know this information.
It is something that I think all of us will be able to gain something out of. I don't even think I'm on the internet. This is good streaming stuff right here. Infocision. Okay, so this is something that allows you to apparently work from home.
Which maybe Akron football needs to work from home.
Yeah, it's a good name for a home stadium. I mean, you'd be working at, okay, so it's the leading marketing provider in contact center industry, leveraging of state and art technologies with decades of experience.
There we go.
And experience. Oh, wow, is it located, the home office is located in Huntington, West Virginia? See a link here with Marshall.
There you go. Look at that. On that note, John, let's
You learned a little bit about,
Akron football and Infocision and what
it's kind of like,
the naming rights for their
it
stadium.
reminds me of a story that I'm writing about rivalries in the Southern Conference. Did you know that the railroad tie that connects Johnson City and Chattanooga, Tennessee is 216 miles in distance?
I did not.
So I just.
There you go. So there you go.
I don't know why, but railroads, Huntington, and Infocision just kind of brought that to my mind. It may not do that for everybody.
On that note, it's been a great show, John. A lot of fun talking FBS football. We are just 2 weeks away from the start of the college football season, week 0 games. We're just right around the corner, less than 14 days now. So
Yeah.
we'll have a lot to talk about in just a couple of weeks. And so stay tuned for more to come here on The Spread. For SoCon John Hooper, I'm Cameron Tarrant. Thanks for Donald Barber for joining us. And as always, thanks through Furman University and the Furman Paladins for allowing us to do this up here.
We got lasted Hunter Reed.
Yeah, Hunter's he's packed up and gone. So a lot of fun as always. SoCon John Hooper, I'm Cameron Tarrant. This is The Spread.